Ambassador Helena Vance had served humanity among the stars for 20 years. She had shaken hands with beings made of crystal. She had negotiated with creatures that spoke through colors instead of words. She had smiled at monsters and called them friends. But tonight, alone in her office on Station Meridian, she stared at her screen and felt her world collapse. The file should not have existed. A minor error in the assembly's data network had opened a door that should have stayed locked forever. Helena had been looking for trade records. Instead, she found humanity's death sentence, written 300 years ago. The document was called the Containment Initiative. It described humanity in terms that made Helena's blood run cold. Apex predator species. Extreme adaptability. Uncontrolled aggression potential. Expansion threat level. Catastrophic. The assembly scientists had studied humans for a decade before first contact. They had watched humanity crawl out of its cradle, reach for the moon, and begin to dream of distant stars. And they had been afraid. Helena read the recommendations. Limit human colony worlds to 12, regardless of population pressure. Restrict military development to defensive systems only. Ban research in genetic enhancement, advanced artificial intelligence, and weapons technology. Control information flow. Present all restrictions as gifts of wisdom from elder species. Make humanity grateful for its chains. The worst part was how well it had worked. Helena thought of her own career, her own pride in humanity's place among the stars. She had believed the assembly story. Humanity was young and reckless, and the assembly was guiding them toward enlightenment. The restrictions were for humanity's own good. The older species knew better. It was all lies. She found the medical reports next. For 300 years, assembly ships had delivered food supplements to Earth and every human colony. The supplements were described as nutritional improvements, adapted to help humans thrive in space. In truth, they contained compounds designed to suppress human neural development. The assembly scientists had discovered something terrifying in the human brain. Humans possessed a capacity for pattern recognition and tactical synthesis that exceeded any known species. Given time and freedom, humans would have developed abilities that made them natural commanders, natural warriors, natural conquerors. So the assembly had drugged them. Every human alive had been chemically prevented from reaching their full potential. Helena herself had been eating the poison since childhood. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. Instead, she copied every file she could find and encrypted them with codes only she knew. Then she began making calls. Admiral Marcus Chun arrived first. He was an old man now, gray-haired and scarred from battles fought at the edge of human space. Pirates, the assembly called them. Rogue species that refused the gift of harmony. Chun had spent his life defending humanity from threats the assembly claimed to have under control. He had always wondered why the assembly's peacekeeping fleets never seemed to arrive in time. Now, he knew Chun read the files in silence. His face did not change. When he finished, he looked at Helena with eyes that held no surprise at all. "I always knew," he said quietly. "I never had proof, but I knew. The way they watched us, the way they smiled. Like zookeepers proud of their favorite animals." Dr. Yuki Tanaka came next. She was younger than the others, but her reputation preceded her. Officially, she led the Prometheus Institute, a research organization dedicated to pushing the boundaries of human science within assembly guidelines. Unofficially, she had been breaking those guidelines for 15 years. Helena showed her the medical reports. Tanaka's reaction was not anger. It was satisfaction. "We suspected," she said. "My predecessors at Prometheus began noticing anomalies decades ago. Humans who grew up on isolated stations, away from assembly supply lines, showed different capabilities. Faster reflexes. Better pattern recognition. We thought it was environmental. Now I know it was the absence of poison." She smiled, and there was something sharp in it. "We've been developing countermeasures for years. We just didn't know what we were countering. Now we do." The three of them talked through the night. They discussed options and discarded most of them. They could reveal the truth to the public, but the Assembly controlled most communication networks. They could appeal to other species, but the files showed that many were either complicit or similarly controlled. They could fight, but humanity's military was designed to lose Dot by morning. They had a plan. It was not a good plan. It was not a safe plan. But it was the only plan that offered humanity a future worth having. Helena would continue her diplomatic work. She would smile at Assembly representatives and thank them for their guidance. She would feed them false reports and carefully shaped intelligence. And she would map every weakness, every fracture, every secret fear that the Assembly tried to hide. Chun would rebuild humanity's military in secret, hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, training programs disguised as civilian exercises, weapons, research conducted in facilities that officially did not exist. It would take years, perhaps decades. But when the time came, humanity would not fight with the toys the Assembly had permitted. Tanaka would unlock the human potential that the Assembly had tried to destroy. She would purify the food supplies. She would develop treatments to reverse centuries of chemical suppression. And she would find out exactly what humanity could become when nothing held them back. Before they parted, Helena stood at her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 4,000 species believed they had humanity under control. They believed they had caged the predator before it grew its teeth. They were wrong. They didn't uplift us, Helena said softly. They leashed us. They drugged us. They smiled while they stole our future. She turned to face the others. No more. From this moment, every smile I give them is a lie. Every handshake is a promise of what's coming. They wanted to keep us weak. They will learn what happens when you try to cage humanity. Chun nodded slowly. The Assembly has 4,000 members. They've maintained peace for 10,000 years. They've crushed every threat that ever rose against them. They've never faced us, Helena replied. Not the real us, not humanity unchained. Tanaka was already heading for the door, her mind clearly racing with possibilities. She paused at the threshold and looked back. They classified us as apex predators, she said. They were more right than they knew. Predators adapt. Predators wait. And predators remember who tried to put them in cages. The door closed behind her. Helena turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, the Assembly celebrated another day of peace and harmony. They had no idea that the storm was coming. Concordance Prime was the heart of the Assembly. The station was massive beyond imagination, a construct of metal and crystal that orbited a dying star. For 10,000 years, it had hosted the gatherings where galactic law was made. 4,000 species sent their representatives here to participate in what the Assembly called the Great Harmony. Helena Vance walked through its corridors with her head held high. Around her, beings of every shape and form moved in careful patterns. The Veth drifted past like floating sculptures, their crystalline bodies catching the light. Chorus drones marched in perfect synchronization, their movements controlled by a mind vast beyond human comprehension. Architects towered over everyone else, their ancient bodies supported by mechanical frames, their eyes holding the weight of millennia. Helena smiled at all of them. She bowed when custom demanded it. She spoke words of respect and gratitude. Inside, she was counting down the minutes. The Grand Chamber was the largest enclosed space ever built. Its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Its floor could hold 1 million beings. Today, representatives from every Assembly species gathered to hear reports and renew their commitment to harmony. Helena took her place at the human podium. It was a small platform, positioned near the back, reflecting humanity's minor status in the galactic order. She did not mind. Soon, everyone would be looking at her anyway. The ceremonies began. Elder race representatives spoke of peace and prosperity. Statistics were presented showing the benefits of cooperation. Speakers praised the wisdom of the Assembly's guidance. Helena waited. In her ear, a tiny device connected her to Admiral Chun, who waited with the hidden fleet in a fold space pocket just outside the system. "All ships report ready," Chun's voice said. "The awakened are in position throughout the station." "Your word starts everything," Helena acknowledged with a subtle gesture. Her turn to speak was approaching when the moderator called on the human delegation. Helena rose and walked to the central speaking platform. This was unusual. Minor species typically spoke from their assigned positions, but no one stopped her. Perhaps they were curious. Perhaps they did not see her as a threat. That was their mistake. Helena looked out at the assembled representatives. Thousands of eyes, sensors, and perception organs focused on her. She took a deep breath. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the chamber. "I come before you to speak of truth." She pressed a hidden control on her podium. Across the chamber, screens activated. Across the station, displays lit up. Across the galaxy, every communication network that humanity had secretly infiltrated began broadcasting. For 300 years, humanity has been a member of this assembly. We were told that we were welcomed as equals. We were told that the restrictions placed on us were for our own good. We were told that the assembly represented harmony and wisdom. The first documents appeared on every screen. Classified files. Secret communications. The containment initiative in all its ugly detail. We were lied to. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Representatives began checking their own devices, seeing the evidence flood through every channel. The assembly did not welcome humanity. The assembly feared us. They classified us as a threat before we ever reached the stars. They designed a plan to keep us weak, ignorant, and controlled. Every restriction, every guideline, every piece of friendly advice was part of a cage built to contain us. She showed them the medical reports, the chemical suppression, the stolen potential. They drugged our food. They poisoned our children. They stole capabilities from us that we did not even know we had, and they smiled while they did it. The Veth representative rose, its crystalline form pulsing with angry light. "These documents are fabrications. Human propaganda designed to what?" Helena cut in. "To tell the truth? Every file I am showing came from your own networks. Every order carries the authentication codes of the elder races. You cannot deny what is written in your own hand." She turned to address the wider chamber. But humanity is not the only victim. The Korthan were pacified. The Meshi were economically strangled. The Vrel had their science stolen. Dozens of species across this galaxy have been controlled, manipulated, and diminished by an assembly that claims to serve them. Representatives began shouting. Some demanded order. Others demanded answers. The careful harmony of the chamber shattered into chaos. Helena raised her hand. "The time for deception is over. The time for change is over. Humanity will no longer bow to masters who smile while they enslave us." She spoke the words she had waited 18 months to say. "Admiral Chun, begin." Outside the station, space itself seemed to tear open. Fold space portals, technology that the assembly believed humans could not possess, blazed into existence. Through them came ships, human ships, ships that should not exist. The Fury led the fleet. Behind it came dozens more, each one a monument to human defiance. They were not elegant like assembly vessels. They were brutal, practical, and armed with weapons that made the station's defenders hesitate in shock. Inside the chamber, figures in human military uniforms revealed themselves. The Awakened had infiltrated the station weeks ago, posing as servants, technicians, and minor officials. Now they moved with inhuman precision, securing exits, neutralizing threats, and protecting Helena as chaos erupted around her. The Assembly's peacekeeping fleet scrambled to respond. These ships were designed to intimidate, not fight. They were built to enforce order against species that had already submitted. They had never faced an enemy that was prepared for real war. Admiral Chun's voice cut through the communication channels, broadcast to every ship in the system. This is Admiral Marcus Chun of the Human Liberation Fleet. For 300 years, your assembly is called Humanity Weak. Today, we show you what humanity truly is. Stand down and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will learn why your masters were so afraid of us. The battle was brief and brutal. Human ships moved with coordination that stunned assembly observers. The Awakened officers aboard each vessel shared tactical information faster than any communication system could transmit. They fought as one mind with many bodies, but unlike the chorus, each individual brought their own creativity, their own innovation, their own human unpredictability. Assembly vessels fell. Some surrendered. Others tried to flee. A few fought bravely but were overwhelmed by tactics they had never seen and could not predict. In the Grand Chamber, Helena stood at the center of history. Around her, the old order crumbled. Representatives from subjugated species watched the human victory with expressions ranging from shock to hope. The elder race representatives watched with something they had not felt in millennia: fear. Helena spoke one final time. Her words broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. To the species of this galaxy, you have been lied to. You have been controlled. You have been told that harmony means submission. We say it means freedom. We say it means strength. We say it means the right to grow without chains. She removed her diplomatic sash and let it fall to the ground. The Assembly told you to fear humanity. Perhaps they were right. But we are not your enemy. We are your proof that the Masters can be defeated. Today, humanity breaks its chains. Tomorrow, we help you break yours. Outside, the last Assembly warship surrendered. The Battle of Concordance Prime was over. The war for the galaxy had just begun. 6 months passed like a held breath. On the surface, nothing changed. Human diplomats continued to bow and smile. Human merchants continued to trade within their permitted limits. Human citizens continued to thank the Assembly for its generous guidance. Beneath the surface, everything changed. Admiral Chun stood in a cavern deep inside an asteroid that officially did not exist. Around him, thousands of workers swarmed over the skeleton of a warship. It was 3 times larger than anything the Assembly had authorized. Its weapon systems existed only in Forbidden's research files. Its armor was made from materials the human scientists had secretly developed in laboratories hidden from Assembly inspectors. Chun called it the Fury. It was the first of many. How long until completion? He asked his chief engineer. 8 months for this one. We have 6 more in various stages of construction across different sites. The Assembly sensors can't penetrate these asteroid fields. We made sure of that. Chun nodded. The Assembly believed human sensor technology was primitive. They believed this because humans had shown them only what they wanted to see. In truth, human engineers had been hiding their real capabilities for over a century. The Prometheus Institute had made sure of that. On Earth, Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked in a facility buried beneath a mountain range. Her team had spent 6 months analyzing the compounds in Assembly food supplements. What they found confirmed everything from Helena's files. The drugs targeted specific neural pathways. They prevented the formation of connections that would have given humans enhanced pattern recognition, accelerated threat assessment, and what Tanaka called tactical precognition. In simple terms, the assembly had stolen humanity's ability to see the future of a fight before it happened. But the human brain was adaptable. It was perhaps the most adaptable organ in the known galaxy. And Tanaka had found a way to undo 3 centuries of damage. She called the treatment the awakening. It was painful. It was dangerous. And it worked. The first volunteer was a young soldier named David Park. He had been selected for his psychological stability and his physical fitness. He understood the risks. He accepted them without hesitation. The treatment took 3 days. Park spent most of it screaming as his neural pathways rebuilt themselves. Tanaka's team monitored every change, adjusting the process in real time to prevent permanent damage. On the 4th day, Park opened his eyes. "How do you feel?" Tanaka asked. Park was silent for a long moment. His eyes moved around the room, tracking patterns that no one else could see. When he spoke, his voice was different, calmer, more certain. "I can see it," he said. "Everything. The way you're standing tells me you're worried, but hopeful. The rhythm of the ventilation system tells me there's a storm outside. The micro-expressions on your assistant's face tell me she's been awake for 36 hours. He paused. "And I can see the 17 different ways this conversation might end, based on what I say next." Tanaka felt a chill run down her spine. This was what the assembly had feared. This was what they had tried to destroy. They had failed. Over the following months, more volunteers underwent the awakening. Not all survived. Some minds could not handle the flood of new information. But those who emerged became something more than human. They called themselves the Awakened, and they began training for the war they knew was coming. Meanwhile, Alana Vance played the most dangerous game of all. She attended assembly functions with a smile that never touched her eyes. She praised the wisdom of the elder races while secretly recording their conversations. She built networks of informants among species that had their own reasons to hate the assemblies. Control. She discovered that humanity was not alone in its chains. The Korthan were a warrior species who had been pacified through similar methods 2,000 years ago. Their fire had been stolen so gradually that most of them had forgotten they ever had it. The Meshi were traders whose economic growth had been deliberately stunted to prevent them from becoming competitors. The Vrel were scientists whose research had been redirected away from dangerous discoveries for centuries. The assembly called it harmony. Helena called it a prison with invisible walls. She also learned about the true power behind the assembly. 3 species controlled everything from the shadows. The Veth were ancient beings made of living crystal, cold and patient and utterly convinced of their own superiority. The Chorus was a hive mind, millions of bodies sharing a single consciousness that saw individual thought as a disease to be cured. The Architects were the oldest of all, beings who had built the assembly itself and considered all other species to be their creations. These 3 had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed every threat, absorbed every rival, and eliminated every species that refused to submit. They believed they were invincible. Helena intended to prove them wrong. 1 year after her discovery, she met with Chun and Tanaka in a secure location. Around them, holographic displays showed the current state of humanity's secret preparations. Hidden fleets, awakened soldiers, alliances with subjugated species, weapons that the assembly had never imagined. "We're not ready," Chun said flatly. "We need more time, more ships, more awakened." "Time is something we don't have," Helena replied. "My sources say the assembly is planning a routine inspection of human space. If they find even a fraction of what we're building, everything falls apart." Tanaka studied the displays. The Awakened are developing faster than expected. Their tactical abilities improve with each passing week. They're learning to work together, to share information in ways that approach what the chorus can do, but without the loss of individuality. How many do we have? Helena asked. 412. All fully operational. Another 2,000 in various stages of treatment. Chun shook his head. It's not enough. The assembly has millions of soldiers, thousands of ships. We cannot win a straight fight. Then, we won't fight straight, Helena said. We'll fight smart. We'll fight human. She pulled up a new display. The assembly's strength is its unity. But that unity is built on fear and lies. If we can shatter the illusion, if we can show the galaxy what the assembly really is, we won't have to fight alone. She outlined her plan. It was audacious. It was terrifying. And it required perfect timing. Chun listened in silence. When Helena finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You want to reveal everything at the Assembly Summit, in front of 4,000 species, while our fleet emerges from hiding and challenges the most powerful military force in galactic history. Yes, Chun smiled slowly. It was not a pleasant smile. I've waited my whole life for a fight worth fighting. This will do. Tanaka nodded. The Awakened are ready. We've been waiting in chains for 300 years. Every one of them will be honored to strike the first blow. Helena looked at her allies. An admiral who had always known the truth. A scientist who had worked in secret to preserve human potential. And herself, a diplomat who had learned that the most dangerous weapon was not a warship, but a well-placed truth. The Assembly had tried to keep humanity small. They had tried to keep humanity weak. They had tried to keep humanity blind. They had no idea what they had created instead. 2 years of war had changed the galaxy forever. The map that once showed 4,000 species united under Assembly rule now showed chaos, conflict, and something that had not existed for 10,000 years, hope, the free worlds. Coalition had grown faster than anyone expected. Humanity's revelation at Concordance Prime had cracked the foundation of Assembly control. Species that had quietly resented their chains suddenly found the courage to remove them. The Korthan remembered their warrior heritage and took up arms again. The Meshi used their economic networks to fund the rebellion. The Vrel shared scientific advances that the Assembly had suppressed for centuries, but the elder races did not fall easily. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of his flagship, now renamed the Unconquered, and studied the tactical display. The system ahead had been a peaceful colony world called New Haven. 20 million humans had lived there, building a future among the stars. The Veth had arrived 3 days ago. They had given no warning, no demand for surrender. They had simply begun bombarding the planet from orbit. By the time coalition forces could respond, the cities were ash. The forests were fire. The oceans were steam. 20 million voices, silenced forever. Chun's hands gripped the command console until his knuckles went white. Around him, his crew worked in grim silence. Many had family on New Haven. All had friends. The Veth fleet is withdrawing, his tactical officer reported. And not staying to fight. Of course not, Chun replied, his voice flat. This wasn't a battle. It was a message. They want us to know that they can destroy everything we love, and we can't stop them. But they were wrong about that too. The war had taught humanity terrible lessons, and humanity had learned them well. The Awakened now numbered in the hundreds of thousands, spread across every ship and battlefield. They had learned to use their abilities in ways that Tanaka had never imagined. Groups of Awakened could share perceptions, creating a combat awareness that exceeded anything the Assembly had ever faced. The Chorus had tried to assimilate them. It had been their greatest mistake. The Battle of Mendiv Station had been a turning point. A Chorus force had captured 100 Awakened soldiers and attempted to absorb them into the hive mind. But human neural architecture did not merge. It dominated. The connection worked in reverse. Instead of losing themselves in the chorus, the awakened pulled individual consciousness out of it. 10,000 chorus drones had suddenly become 10,000 individuals. They had felt independent thought for the first time in their existence. The shock had shattered the chorus command structure. Many of the freed individuals had joined the coalition, bringing intimate knowledge of chorus weaknesses. The chorus had not attempted assimilation since .now. Only the architects remained at full strength. They were the oldest species in the galaxy, the builders of the assembly itself. For 10,000 years, they had guided galactic civilization according to their design. They had never faced a serious challenge to their authority. Until now. Helena Vance had spent 2 years building the coalition's political structure while Chun fought the military war. She had transformed a desperate rebellion into a genuine alternative to assembly rule. Species joined not because they feared humanity, but because they believed in the future humanity offered. But she knew that military victory alone would not end the war. As long as the architects retained their ultimate weapon, the conflict could turn against them in an instant. The Harmony Engine. Coalition intelligence had confirmed its existence 6 months ago. It was an ancient device, built in the early days of the assembly, capable of rewriting the neural patterns of an entire species. The architects had used it once before on a species called the Keth, who had threatened their rule. The Keth had been transformed from proud warriors into passive servants in a single day. Within a generation, they had lost the will to exist at all. Now the architects were preparing to use it again. On humanity. Chun had received the intelligence 3 days ago. The engine was being activated in the architect home system. Coalition analysts estimated they had less than a month before it was ready. Once activated, it could be targeted at any species the architects chose. Humanity would be the first, then the Korthan, then every other species that had dared to resist. The coalition fleet was not strong enough to assault the architect home system directly. Their defenses were ancient and formidable. Their ships were few but immensely powerful. The engine itself was located in a fortress that had never been breached. Chun had volunteered to lead the last mission anyway. The assault force was small by necessity. 50 ships, crewed by the best awakened officers in the coalition. They would have to fight through defenses designed to stop 1,000 ships. They would have to reach the engine before it could fire. And they would have to destroy it, no matter the cost. Helena had argued against the mission. The odds were impossible. Chun was too valuable to risk. The coalition needed him. Chun had simply smiled. The coalition needs humanity to survive. If that engine fires, everything we've built dies with it. I've spent my whole life defending humanity from threats. This is the threat that matters. I won't send someone else to face it. The battle for the architect home system lasted 4 hours. It was the most desperate fighting the war had seen. Architect weapons tore through coalition ships with terrible efficiency. Awakened crews performed miracles of coordination, their shared awareness allowing them to react faster than any computer system. Ships died. Heroes died. The assault force was cut in half, then cut in half again. But they kept coming. The Unconquered led the final charge. Around it, the survivors of the assault force formed a wedge aimed at the heart of the architect fortress. Defensive fire blazed against them. Chun watched his ships die one by one, their crews sacrificing themselves to buy time. The fortress loomed ahead, vast and ancient. Somewhere inside, the Harmony Engine was powering up, preparing to steal humanity's soul. Chun had known from the beginning that he would not survive this mission. He had made peace with that. But he would not die alone, and he would not die for nothing. The Unconquered breached the fortress's outer defenses. It tore through the final barrier and crashed into the chamber that held the engine. Chun had one moment to see it, a device of terrible beauty, pulsing with energy that could reshape minds across the galaxy. He opened a channel to the fleet. His voice was calm. To all ships, the engine is destroyed. Humanity remains free. Continue the fight. Win this war. Remember why we fought. He looked at the engine. He thought of New Haven, 20 million dead. He thought of 3 centuries of chains. He thought of every human who had ever been told they were not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough. We do not kneel, he said softly. We do not forget. We do not forgive. He activated the self-destruct. The explosion consumed the unconquered, the engine, and the heart of the architect fortress. The flash was visible across the system. Across the coalition, humans and allies watched as one of humanity's greatest warriors became one of its greatest legends. Helena Vance wept openly when she received the news. The awakened lowered their heads in silent tribute. On ships and stations throughout the free worlds, Chen's final words were repeated like a prayer. The architects, their greatest weapon destroyed, their fortress shattered, began their retreat. Their 10,000-year dominion was ending. The war was not over, but humanity had proven that it could not be broken. The price had been terrible. The sacrifices would never be forgotten, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the guns fell silent. The galaxy that emerged from the Liberation War was scarred, exhausted, and utterly transformed. Where the Assembly had once stood as an unquestioned authority, there was now something new, something that had never existed before: genuine freedom. Helena Vance stood at the window of her office on Earth, watching the sun set over a world that had finally reclaimed its destiny. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, her face marked by years of war and diplomacy. But her eyes still held the same fire that had burned when she first discovered the Assembly's lies. Behind her, preparations continued for the ceremony that would formalize the new galactic order. The Assembly was gone. The Veth had fragmented into dozens of factions, their ancient unity shattered by defeat and internal conflict. Some had retreated to their homeworld, nursing grudges. Others had accepted the new reality and sought peaceful relations with the coalition. A few had even apologized for their role in humanity's suppression. Though Helena suspected their sincerity, the chorus had changed the most dramatically. When the connection that bound them was broken, millions of individuals suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time. The trauma had been immense. Many had not survived the transition, but those who did had discovered something precious: the ability to think their own thoughts, to make their own choices, to be their own persons. Coalition counselors had worked with the freed chorus for years, helping them build identities from scratch. Some had chosen to form new voluntary connections with each other, small groups bound by choice rather than compulsion. Others had embraced complete individuality. All of them were still learning what it meant to be themselves. The architects had withdrawn to their final world and sealed themselves away from the galaxy they had once ruled. Their great works stood silent, monuments to a power that had finally overreached. Helena sometimes wondered if they would ever emerge again. She suspected they would, eventually. The galaxy would have to be ready when they did. But today was not about old enemies. Today was about new beginnings. The Covenant of Equals was the document that would replace the Assembly's charter. Helena had spent 3 years drafting it, working with representatives from hundreds of species to create something the galaxy had never seen. An alliance built on genuine partnership, rather than hidden control. The principles were simple. No species would be restricted in its development. No species would be drugged or manipulated. No species would be subjugated for the comfort of others. Strength would be respected, not feared. Difference would be celebrated, not suppressed. It was not a perfect document. No document could be. But it was a promise, and humanity intended to keep it. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had continued her work after the war. The awakened had become a permanent part of human society, their abilities passed down to new generations. But Tanaka had insisted that the treatment be offered to any species that wanted it. Humanity would not repeat the Assembly's mistake of hoarding power. The results had been remarkable. Korthan warriors who underwent the awakening became legendary battlefield commanders. Meshi traders developed economic intuition that transformed galactic commerce. Vrel scientists made breakthroughs that advanced technology by centuries in a single decade. Not every species wanted the treatment. Some preferred to remain as they were, and that choice was respected. But the option existed, a gift freely given rather than jealously guarded. Helena thought often of Admiral Chun. His sacrifice at the Architect homeworld had become the defining moment of the war. On Earth and across the Coalition, memorials bore his name. His final words were inscribed on monuments, repeated in speeches, taught to children as soon as they could understand them. We do not kneel. We do not forget. We do not forgive. But Helena had added her own words to his legacy. In her speeches, she always included a continuation that she believed Chun would have approved. We do not kneel, but we will help others rise. We do not forget, but we can move forward. We do not forgive those who enslaved us, but we will not become enslavers ourselves. The ceremony took place in a new structure, built on the site of the old United Nations headquarters. Representatives from 300 species gathered to witness the signing of the covenant. Many more watched through broadcasts that reached every corner of the galaxy. Helena spoke last. 10 years ago, I discovered that everything I believed about our place in the galaxy was a lie. The Assembly had deceived humanity. They had stolen our potential. They had kept us as pets while pretending to be our friends. She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. Humans stood beside Korthan warriors, Meshi merchants, Rel scientists, freed Chorus individuals, and dozens of other species who had joined the coalition. We could have responded with hatred. We could have become conquerors ourselves, replacing one tyranny with another. Some argued that we should. They said that the galaxy only respected strength, and that we should use our strength to dominate as the Assembly once did. She shook her head. We chose differently. We chose to be what the Assembly pretended to be, but never was. Genuine partners. Genuine allies. Genuine friends. She gestured to the covenant document before her. This agreement contains no hidden clauses, no secret protocols, no plans to suppress or control. It is exactly what it claims to be, a promise that we will stand together as equals. Each species free to grow according to its own nature. Each species protected by the strength of all. She lifted the pen that would add her signature to the document. The Assembly called us dangerous. They were right. We are dangerous to any who would enslave others. We are dangerous to any who would crush the potential of the young and the weak. We are dangerous to tyrants and deceivers and those who believe. That peace can only be maintained through control. She signed her name with a steady hand. Let this covenant stand as humanity's promise to the galaxy. We will not repeat the Assembly's crimes. We will not become what we fought to destroy. We will be strong, yes, but our strength will protect, not oppress. Our strength will liberate, not enslave. She stepped back from the podium. Around her, representatives from 100 species added their own signatures. The Covenant of Equals was complete. 3 days later, Helena received word that Coalition scouts had made contact with a new species at the edge of explored space. They called themselves the Thren. They were young, aggressive, and full of potential. By Assembly standards, they would have been classified as a containment priority. Helena traveled to meet them personally. The Thren representative was a fierce creature. scaled and sharp-eyed, clearly suspicious of the strange beings who had appeared at its people's doorstep. Its posture spoke of readiness for violence. Its eyes evaluated Helena as either threat or prey. Helena had faced down elder race leaders during the darkest days of the war. She was not intimidated by one young species finding its feet. She smiled and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to the galaxy," she said. "Let me tell you about strength." The Thren hesitated. Then, slowly, it reached out to take her hand. Behind them, the stars burned with the light of 1,000 worlds. A galaxy that had been ruled by fear now stood on the edge of something new. It would not be easy. It would not be peaceful. There would be conflicts and challenges, and perhaps more wars. But humanity had learned something in the fire of liberation. Strength was not about control. Strength was about choice. And the strongest choice of all was to help others become strong enough to stand on their own. The Assembly had tried to keep humanity small. They had failed. Now humanity would help the galaxy become greater than any Assembly had ever imagined. Not through force, not through fear, but through the simple, powerful act of offering the same gift they had fought to claim for themselves. Freedom. The future was unwritten. But for the first time in 10,000 years, every species would have the chance to write their own story. And that, Helena thought as she guided the young Thren toward the light of new possibilities, was strength worth having.